Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here, and today we're going to take a look at a different group of Micromasters. Instead of looking at a patrol like we've covered in a video prior to this, we're going to take a look at a squad. More specifically, we are taking a look at the 1990 Autobot Astro Squad. The Astro Squad was released in 1990, and they would only be available in 1990, as that would be the year the line would be discontinued. As you can see, instead of like the patrols that we've covered a couple of times here on this channel, instead of 4 Micromasters, we have 6. This was due to a unique gimmick that these guys were given. Each one, they could all be connected in pairs. So that made you end up with a larger vehicle, but they could also be interchanged. And we'll show that a little later on in this video. For now, though, we're going to break them all off into their respective pairs, and we'll give each one of them a good review. We hope. Okay, first of all, we'll start with the 2 red guys here. We'll start with this one. This is Moonrock. Moonrock here is basically the lazy, good-for-nothing, laid-back character of the group. He's often in a bit of a daze, not really paying attention to what's going on. Kind of the daydreamer as well, kind of wondering, where our place in the universe and all that stuff. Downside is that he's even willing to do that, and despite being the front end of the vehicle, he's more than willing to let Blastmaster back there, or whoever else he's linked up to, do the driving instead. That way he can just come along for the ride. Taking a look at Moonrock's articulation, his arms can be brought up all the way like that, just a shade shy of pointing straight up, but they can go straight down just like that for his transformation. He does have a joint at the hip that does allow him to bend at the hip, and there is a joint at the knee, but that's more used for transforming him. Before we transform him, though, let's put him back here, and we'll introduce you to his partner, Blastmaster. Now, Blastmaster here, he's the leader of the Astro Squad, at least according to the More Than Meets the Eye guidebooks published by IDW. Blastmaster is a obsessive control freak. He's got to be in charge. If he is not in charge of a situation, he spends most of his time thinking about how things can be handled more efficiently when he's doing it. So he's one of them that's a little bit weird, and unfortunately for him, that also gives him a rather fragile ego. If he knows that somebody's doing a better job than him, it can make him depressed, and then he's a liability to the group. Of course, the backside of the figure is also kind of poor to look at with this thing hanging on it. I should use this to take this opportunity to show you all the one lone missing piece from this squad. This is the only loose part on them, is this white missile. The only hollow side is here at the bottom. You got a couple of hollow grooves, and this groove here at the back, that's how it connects onto the post here. You just Just gently put it on there, and that's the end of it, really. Alright, to transform the two, we'll start here with Moonrock. All you gotta do on Moonrock is fold his arms against his body. Then you'll take his legs, then fold them up and over, like so. And he forms the front of the vehicle. Now for Missile Master, the first thing we gotta do is raise the rocket and rotate it on its base so it points straight up. You're going to fold his arms down as well. And then you fold his feet up just like that. And you'll notice here these guys got a couple of posts. They got a post and a hole. All you do is snap them together. And you've got their vehicle mode, a missile carrier. I mean, well, they got all plastic wheels here. They all do roll. Doesn't roll too terribly bad here on this table. It's not too bad. And he does have a rather unique alternate mode, so let's give the boys some credit here. Alright, who's next? Okay, next up we will take a look at these two members of the group. Right here you have Phaser, and here we have Blastmaster. Now, of course, Phaser probably causes them a little bit of confusion and problems due to the fact that Phaser is also well known as being an energy weapon used on the Starship Enterprise. So I can only just imagine the field day that their lawyers must have had with that one. Let's bring him up close to the camera here so you can get a good look at him. Phaser is the other serious member of the team, so that effectively makes him second in command of the unit. In ways, he also has some of my character traits in the fact that he is always checking up to make sure that not only is he doing his job, but making sure nobody else is screwing up theirs. Mainly due to the fact that his partner tends to be overenthusiastic, causing them to forget people that are critical for the mission, or even overshoot their target. Problem is that this does put a lot of stress on Phaser, and he tends to get burned out rather easily from the stress. Taking a look at his articulation, his arms, this is as high up as his arms will go. Of course, they can be brought down against his body. He does have a joint at the hip, so he can bend at the hip. And he does bend at the knee, but in the opposite direction. So that's more meant for his transformation. Set him aside, and then we call up Blastmaster. And of course, he probably also came close to causing a bit of a legal hassle because there was a video game out on the Nintendo Entertainment System at the time called Blastmaster. So they probably dodged a bullet on that one. Anyway, like stated earlier, he's the enthusiastic go-getter on the team. Here's about a mission, he's ready to go. He wants to get his orders, load up what's needed, and get going on it. The only problem is that he gets so excited about it that he tends to forget key personnel or equipment that was needed for the mission, or he ends up overshooting their target planet that they were supposed to go to, and thus they end up wasting time having to travel back. I mean, it's nice to be enthusiastic and all, but come on. That's a little bit much, my friend. Now, when it comes to articulation, he's a little bit better than his partner. He can bring his arms up all the way, just like that, just even slightly back, actually, or fold them flush against his body. He can bend at the hip, just like that, and he also bends at the knees in the same way as his partner, so it's more for transforming him than anything else. Now we'll transform this dynamic duo, starting with Phaser. To transform Phaser, the first thing you'll do is lower his arms against his body. You'll take this bit of nose cone on the top and fold it down over his head. And then you will fold his legs upward at the hip and then fold his legs underneath him like so. That gets him converted. Now for Blastmaster, we'll start out the same way. You'll fold his arms down. Then you're going to take his head and fold it backward into his body. Legs, like his partner, you'll fold them up at the hip against his back and then fold down the legs and feet against him. Then you're going to raise this tail fin straight up and fold down his wings. I think you can see where we're going with this one, folks, but got to do it anyways. Connect the two of them together, and you have a somewhat longer version of a NASA orbiter, i.e. the old classic space shuttle. I mean, holding this one-handed, it does, as a toy, it does swoosh pretty good. It's what you like for flying toys. They gotta swoosh. They gotta swoosh easily in one hand. But he also does have wheels. It's got 3 wheels on the bottom. Oops. Yeah, he does. They do roll kind of good. I mean, I think he's a little long in the middle here, but otherwise it's not a bad representation of a NASA space shuttle. All right, let's get the last group. All right, here's the last of them. We have Barrage and Hiva. And if any of you are going to Hiva, I ask you please pause the video and go now. Barrage, over there on the left, has the fortune or misfortune to share his name with another Transformer in the line. This is the Deluxe Insecticon Barrage. And then you have a Micromaster named Barrage. Spelled exactly the same, but they are quite different characters. So, I don't know how that happened, folks. But, well, you got 300 toys in this lineup. Matching names was bound to happen. And in the Generation 1 line, at least the stuff that was released here in America, there are 2 instances that this happened. This was one of them. Okay, let's bring the Micromaster Barrage up close, and we'll tell you a little bit about him. Barrage here is the resident tough guy of the group. He's the one that's ready to go into battle. Moment they touch down, he's raring to go. Get out there and start blasting Decepticons. He also doesn't care much for rules, So that means when they're on an assignment that doesn't involve battle, Barrage here gets pretty bored. Now, taking a look at his articulation, he can raise his arm straight up or all the way straight down. He does have a joint at the hip that allows you to bend him at the hip like so, and he does bend at the knees in the proper way. Pity they didn't make a chair for him to sit on. And now we'll take a look at his buddy Hiva. It's kind of who came up with this name. Alright, folks, this is Hiva. Hiva's the quiet scientist of the group. So he really doesn't like being the partner of Barrage, because he more wants to study things around him, or he can act as their communications outpost. More often than not, when they're merged in vehicle mode, he's being dragged along to go plowing head first into battle. All the while screaming, "Help!" as they go. Now, as for his articulation, he can raise his arm up, same way, straight up, or bring them flat against the body. He can bend at the hip like so, and bend at the knees like so. I also want to point out that he's one of the few that comes with his own weapons built into him. As you can see, those 4 little holes there at the sides of his head, those are his missile launchers. No, we don't care if you're ready for your close-up or not. Alright, transform these two. Start off with Barrage. We'll fold his arms flush against his body, and then you'll fold his legs up at the knee over the top of him, and there you go, you got his vehicle mode ready. To get Hiva ready, you just fold his arms against his body and do the same thing with his legs. Just fold them up at the knee, and there you go. Of course, you can also rotate the satellite dish here on the back. It can rock back and forth, and it does rotate as well, so you can play pretend that you're angling the dish in a different direction. But of course, combine them together, and you've got a pretty large-sized exploration rover. And this, with them big plastic tires, this thing just rolls. This rolls real good on this surface here. Now, I want to point out as well that Hiva back here is one of the few that's a rear-end vehicle that he doesn't need the front-end guy to work. He can operate independently. Well, I mean, I'm sure the others can have some level of independent operation, but he is one of the few that definitely can do it and still be relatively useful thanks to that little radar dish there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there is a bit of a gimmick to these guys, and we're going to go over it now. I'm sure many of you have already figured out what that gimmick is, but for the benefit of those of you who don't, the gimmick was that these guys were all interchangeable. You did not have to have them connected to the guy they were supposed to. So you could shift them around, reconnect them up like so, and there you go. You had different vehicles. I believe this was more being done as a take on a line of toy vehicles that was released by Matchbox, I believe, at the time. I'm not exactly sure if they were the ones behind it or not. But they were a toy line called Connectables. They featured a variety of cars and trucks and military vehicles, and there were a couple of flying vehicles in there too that they had. So they were divided segmentally like this, and you could rearrange them to create a new toy. The biggest thing about the Connectables, though, was that they were sort of like this, where some of the vehicles were in two pieces like this, but they also included larger vehicles that were 3 pieces long, so they had a middle segment. And those were definitely the ideal ones, was to get those bigger ones. Unfortunately, the vehicles are always sold in a 2-pack, where you got one big one and one small one. You definitely wanted those bigger ones. You wanted more middle segments. More middle segments that you had, you could build yourself a real long toy. Pardon me here, folks. Have a drink. That's better. But on these guys here, well, it's a cute little gimmick, and it does work for play value. I will give it that, because younger kids would definitely have a blast reconfiguring them so that they could come up with different vehicles and try to come up with new abilities for them to have. Like, I mean, you know, what child wouldn't look at this and try to dream of it as a spacefaring car of some sort, you know? But from a tactical perspective and such, it's stupid. It doesn't really serve any purpose. So, but that's the gimmick. They were trying everything they could pull out, Hasbro was, to sell these toys, and unfortunately, I think this was one of the ideas that was the straw that broke the camel's back. But then again, this was also the same year the Action Masters came out, so go figure, right, fans? Okay, moving right along to the part that we usually do at about this time. We have their card backer. Yeah, it's not in the best of shape, but at least it's more intact than some. And of course, the gimmick on here, they would display the gimmick. The figures that were here in the middle would be separated. That explains the big spark there. I'm guessing it would have been Moonrock and Missile Master that were there in the middle. I mean, the curve back here on this one, that's clearly where the space shuttle was. So I would guess those two were broken up. Missile Master and Moonrock were broken up here. And then you got Barrage and Hiva down here at the bottom. Which kind of looks right. I mean, over here on the side, they show off how to do it and kind of emphasize it, you know, form new teams, because they could combine with any of the others that were released in the line. You could even make Autobot and Decepticon hybrids together if you wanted to. And you got here Autobot, Astro Squad, and then you got the little text down here. It includes 3 vehicles. Each transforms into 2 Micromasters, or Micro-Robots, rather. Weapons do not shoot. They didn't come with weapons. Save for that missile. Alright, here on the back side, they kind of give some more text up here about the bit with these combiners. Then they also give you a little bit of a grid to show you off a variety of the others. Kind of put a lot of emphasis on the mix and matching that you could do with them. And of course these are using a lot of Autobot and Decepticon. Because I mean, I know this tank piece here is definitely from a Decepticon. And this wing set here, that's also definitely a Decepticon. The construction ones, it's hard to tell because the construction guys were repainted for some of the play sets that were available at the time too, so it's a little hard to guess at, folks. And of course, they give the instructions and show a picture of both robots. You got the front guy on the left, the rear guy on the right. And they go in the same order they were shown on the front of the box here. Remember, you can't always pause it if you really want to, if you want to read the directions and such. And of course, down here in the bottom right corner, we have the barcode and the robot points. Despite the fact there was nothing available at that time, they were worth 1.5 points. And then over here, we've got a picture of them as a scattered group. It would match their pictures that were all above there and on the front of the card. It's done in red to show they're an Autobot in big bright letters. It does say Autobot. And it gives them as the Astro Squad. It lists their function as interstellar defense. The group's motto is, "There's no speed like light speed." Each Micromaster combiner in the Astro Squad detaches from its main vehicle mode and can be reattached with another Micromaster combiner to create exciting new galactic special teams. Self-sufficient, metallized warriors. The Autobots' first line of defense against the Decepticons. Protected by an impenetrable coating of cyclonic steel for withstanding maximum enemy photon blasts. Able to travel at light speed and rocket across the galaxies in seconds. Equipped with an array of advanced technological microcircuitry for defensive maneuvers and deep space exploratory operations. Also armed with an anti-gravitational device to counteract Decepticon tractor beam attacks. Sometimes travel too fast and overshoot objective. Alright, and like with any other Micromaster group, they got the different grid here that has different, it's got different stats that it tracks. It gives their teamwork as 7, their cooperation is 9, their strength is 10, their endurance is 6, their speed is 10, their intelligence is 8, their courage is 7, and their skill is 9. So this group's pretty good at what they do as a whole. Individually, they probably start to lose it a little bit. Now we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of the Astro Squad? The Astro Squad kind of works pretty well. I mean, we didn't get another space. This is our first spaceship unit since Blastoff was put out in 1986. And we definitely never had a lunar rover, and the missile carrier that the other guys form is certainly unique. However, the gimmick that is used for them is kind of overemphasized a bit. It really doesn't work out, and by themselves, it gets kind of boring fast. If you have a few of the other teams, or some of the other toys that were released with it, I can imagine that those would be quite fun to merge together and come up with wild ideas on how to use them. But as a whole by themselves, it's kind of nyeh on how well the gimmick works for me. As toys, yeah, they're kind of fun. I mean, I didn't have these growing up as a toy. Growing up as a child, I had one of the other teams. This one I got as an adult collector. But I can't really fault them for what they are. They are an interesting little group. The personalities that have been added to them by the writers at IDW Comics certainly gives them a little more flavor. I mean, I'm not exactly a fan of how all of them are depicted, but it at least is better than what little we got from Hasbro on it. The gimmick, like I said earlier, I'm not a fan of. I never really was a fan of it. I never will be a fan of it. But that's more the adult collector in me talking instead of the child me that probably would have had more fun with this if I was a little younger when they came out. I mean, these came out in 1990. If it weren't for the fact that I had a younger brother, I probably wouldn't have bothered with getting the set that I did have. So the gimmick's kind of lost on me, folks, but all in all, I'm going to still put these guys on the middle tier. They're certainly not top tier worthy material, but I don't think they're a bad unit. They're something unique and covered an area that the Autobots really didn't have a whole lot going for them at the time. I mean, the year prior, we got Countdown for them, so that gave them another space-themed toy, and I could see these guys would complement Countdown and his large rocket base playset very well, so I'd say they're a middle-tier toy, folks. They certainly do hold their own, and if you happen to have Countdown, I could see them as being a great thing to go along well with the display. And that concludes my review of the 1990 Autobot Interstellar Defense Unit, the Astro Squad. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up here on YouTube. Also on YouTube, hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't joined us already. Please also consider leaving a like on this video and share your thoughts on the Astro Squad down in the comments section below. This is Sparkster1701 saying I'm getting ready to head out into the final frontier, so I will catch you all later. Now, Mr. Data, warp speed.